Hello, dear viewers. Welcome to our channel, Genesis to Apostle. Today, we are exploring one of the most mysterious and powerful figures in the Bible, named Melchizedek. Who was he? Why is he so significant? And what does his story mean for us as Christians today? Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to receive updates on more in-depth biblical insights if you are prepared to delve into the rich symbolism and lessons surrounding this king-priest and his encounter with Abraham. Also share this with someone so they can gain from the insight shared. Melchizedek is a mysterious and significant figure in the Bible, first introduced in Genesis chapter 14 from verses 17 to 20 during an encounter with Abraham. He is described as the king of Salem, later identified with Jerusalem, and a priest of the Most High God. The brief encounter occurs after Abraham rescues his nephew Lot from the hands of 4 kings who had captured him and plundered the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. As Abraham returns from his victory, Melchizedek meets him, bringing out bread and wine, and blesses Abraham, saying, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand." In response, Abraham gives Melchizedek a tithe, which is 10% of everything he had obtained from the battle, marking this as the first instance of tithing recorded in the Bible. After this brief mention, Melchizedek is not spoken of again until the Psalms and later in the New Testament. Despite his brief appearance in the Bible, Melchizedek's significance cannot be understated, particularly because of how he is later referenced in connection with Jesus Christ. His story is mentioned again in Psalm 110, verse 4, where it is written, "The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever, in the order of Melchizedek." The author of the book of Hebrews in the New Testament expands greatly on Melchizedek's significance, drawing parallels between Melchizedek and Jesus Christ. Melchizedek's role as both king and priest stands out as highly unusual in the biblical narrative. In ancient Israel, these two roles were typically kept distinct from one another. Kings came from the line of David and were primarily political and military leaders, whereas priests came from the line of Aaron of the tribe of Levi and served in the temple, mediating between God and the people through sacrifices and rituals. The separation was meant to preserve the purity of each role. Kings dealt with governance and justice, while priests handled spiritual matters. However, Melchizedek uniquely embodies both offices, which makes him a significant figure and foreshadows the coming of Jesus Christ, who perfectly fulfills the roles of both king and priest. Melchizedek's dual role as both king and priest foreshadows the ultimate fulfillment of these roles in Jesus Christ. Jesus is often referred to as the King of Kings and the Great High Priest, embodying both offices in a perfect and eternal way. Jesus, like Melchizedek, is a king of peace and righteousness. His reign brings about true justice and reconciliation, not through force or coercion, but through his sacrificial love. Jesus' kingship is not bound by earthly limitations, and his authority is over all creation. He rules with both compassion and righteousness, fulfilling the messianic promise of a ruler who would bring peace to the world. Jesus is also our high priest, the one who mediates between humanity and God. But unlike the Levitical priests, who had to offer sacrifices repeatedly, Jesus offered himself as the once and for all sacrifice for sin. His priesthood is eternal and far superior to the Levitical system because it is based on his perfect, sinless nature and his resurrection power. Like Melchizedek, Jesus' priesthood is not inherited through a human lineage, but is appointed by God himself, making it eternal and unchanging. Where Melchizedek provides a shadow of what is to come, Jesus fully embodies both roles. As king, he reigns eternally with justice and peace, and as priest, he intercedes on our behalf before God. In Jesus, the separation between the two roles is broken down, and he perfectly unites the responsibilities of governing the people and mediating their relationship with God. Melchizedek represents a priesthood of timelessness, which paves the way for understanding Jesus' eternal role as a priest. The New Testament, particularly the book of Hebrews, emphasizes that Jesus is a priest in the order of Melchizedek, rather than in the order of the Levitical priests. This distinction is important because it highlights the superiority and eternality of Jesus' priesthood over the temporary, human-centered priesthood of the Levites. Just like Melchizedek's priesthood appears to have no beginning or end, Jesus' priesthood is described as eternal. Hebrews chapter 7 verse 24 says, "Because Jesus lives forever, he has a permanent priesthood." This means that Jesus' intercession for us is unending. There is no need for a succession of priests, because he himself continues forever as our mediator before God. The story of Melchizedek reminds us that God's plans are eternal and not limited by time, human structures, or earthly genealogies. Just as Melchizedek's priesthood was outside the usual norms, so too is God's plan for salvation through Jesus. He operates on a divine timeline that transcends human understanding, ensuring that his purposes are fulfilled. The absence of genealogy underscores that God is not bound by physical or hereditary limitations. Spiritual identity, faith, and divine calling matter more than earthly qualifications. This is an important reminder for Christians today that God chooses based on his will, not on human qualifications, lineage, or background. Where human priests were bound by time, death, and human frailty, Jesus' priesthood is eternal, perfect, and divinely appointed. This gives Christians great confidence in the permanence of our salvation, knowing that Jesus continually intercedes for us as a priest forever. This also teaches us that even when they appear out of nowhere, God can produce rulers, priests, or leaders in accordance with his divine will. Melchizedek's role in blessing Abram wasn't dependent on his genealogy or any prior knowledge the people had about him. This story reminds us that God works on a different plane, and his plans for salvation, leadership, and blessing are not restricted to human expectations. Just as Melchizedek appeared and fulfilled a significant role in Abraham's life without any prior warning, so too does God often work in unexpected and mysterious ways. He raises people according to his will, not according to our expectations. And his divine purpose unfolds in ways that are beyond our full comprehension. This encourages us to trust in God's wisdom, even when we don't have all the answers, and to be open to the possibility that he can work through the most unexpected means to accomplish his perfect will. Another key lesson is that Melchizedek serves as a model of righteousness and peace. The story of Melchizedek provides a profound insight into the intertwined nature of righteousness and peace, represented in his very name and title. The name Melchizedek means King of Righteousness, and his title as King of Salem, which means peace, presents him as a figure embodying both qualities. As Christians, Melchizedek's example calls us to actively pursue both righteousness and peace in our everyday lives. Strive for honesty and moral integrity in all areas of life, whether in our personal relationships, workplace interactions, or community engagements. Being transparent and trustworthy can cultivate a sense of peace with others. Approach conflicts with a desire for reconciliation rather than retaliation. Practice forgiveness and seek to understand others' perspectives, fostering a peaceful environment even amid disagreements. The next important point is giving as an act of worship. Abraham's act of giving a tithe to Melchizedek is a powerful illustration of how giving is fundamentally an act of worship, rooted in acknowledgement of God's provision and grace in our lives. This principle of giving transcends mere financial transactions. It embodies a spiritual response to God's blessings, serving as a reminder of our relationship with Him and our dependence on His goodness. In Genesis chapter 14, when Abraham returns from a victorious battle to rescue his nephew Lot, he encounters Melchizedek, who blesses him. As Christians, we are called to cultivate a spirit of generosity, which aligns with the heart of God. The act of giving should not be seen as a burden or an obligation, but as a joyful response to God's grace in our lives. When we approach giving with the mindset that it is an act of worship, it transforms our perspective and encourages us to look for opportunities to bless others. In conclusion, the story of Melchizedek, though brief, carries profound theological significance. He is a foreshadowing of Christ, a priest-king who prefigures the eternal and perfect priesthood of Jesus. His encounter with Abraham emphasizes the importance of righteousness, peace, humility, and faith. Through Melchizedek, we learn that God's plans are often beyond our understanding, but they are always for our good and for His glory. By reflecting on Melchizedek's role, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the unique and eternal priesthood of Jesus Christ, who blesses us, intercedes for us, and reigns as our King forever. If you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. And don't forget to check out our other videos on biblical characters and their lessons for today's world. Until next time, keep seeking wisdom, stay blessed, and continue growing in your faith.